Hello, everyone. My name is Karol Severin. I'm the research director at Media Research, and with me here today is Hanna Kahlert, our social coverage area analyst. Hello, Hanna.
Hello, Karol. How's it going?
Good, good. Thank you. Hanna, you've been doing a lot of research work lately around the revival of sort of analog or physical formats in entertainment and consumer culture more broadly. And I know you have just authored a really insightful report on the topic, which I can only encourage everyone listening to check out and download the free summary of below. Can you tell us a bit about what do you mean when you talk about analog revival? And is there any data evidence to suggest that analog has indeed been on the rise?
Sure. So, first of all, I think it's important to clarify when we're talking about an analog revival. It's not strictly analog in the technical sense. We're using it sort of as a stand-in to refer to entertainment that is more physical, tactile, basically non-screen based. So something that's not on the smartphone screen. So for example, CDs and DVDs are technically digital, but we're thinking about them in we would use them in a very different way. And we think about them in a very different way than we do streaming, for example. So this is what we really mean when we talk about an analog revival, or we can talk about physical entertainment revival. This has been a very interesting bit of research to do in that, because on the cultural surface, it really does seem to be happening. So you have things like Book Talk, where everyone has their special shelves covered in like the latest, prettiest covers, whatever, and they compete over it. You have vinyl appearing in TV shows. You have YouTube channels that go viral about going off grid. You have Polaroid cameras that you can buy in your average supermarket. So the question is, how big is this? Is this something fairly ironically that's trending on social media, or is this something that is really happening and being reflected in the numbers? According to Media's forecast, we've seen physical rose last year. In conversation with the ERA, they've seen vinyl actually be on the rise in the UK for the last 16 years. We also see a younger skew with below 35s over-indexing for things like vinyl purchasing and CDs. The ERA reports this is true for DVDs as well. This is not a huge trend, and it doesn't seem to be detracting from digital consumption. Overwhelmingly, this is still the majority, the main way that people consume entertainment. But it is very interesting to see that it is on the rise, and it's becoming a very important qualitative part of how consumers are consuming and appreciating the entertainment that they enjoy.
Right. Okay. So I know that this report also talks about the sort of key whys behind the rise of analog or physical or non-digital, non-screen, as you rightly put it. Can you talk us through some of the sort of consumer psychology behind it? Like why is it that analog or physical is on the rise?
Two main reasons for why we see this occurring. One is a need for connection, and this is really strongly linked to fandom and how it is expressed. And the other one is actually linked to a broader trend of digital disengagement. We can start off talking a little bit about the connection aspect. When we survey consumers, 73% say that the music they listen to reflects who they are. This is much higher than they say about the clothes that they wear or even the people that they hang out with. So obviously music is a really big part of not only something that you appreciate, but who, like consumers, who you are as an audience member. But when we actually look at how they consume, if we look at streaming, over 40% of streaming music happens in the background while someone's doing something else, which really isn't that meaningful connection that you would kind of expect. So clearly there's a gap here between the value entertainment holds for audiences and the way that they are consuming it and what that does to that value. And physical sort of brings back some of this. It sort of bridges that gap. So being able to purchase a record or go to a show or have a t-shirt all play into the fan needs of connection, being able to display their fandom to their fellow fans, feeling like they're supporting the artist that they care about, feeling like it's a reflection of who they are. It's actually really big on this identity aspect, in the sense that when we look at vinyl purchasing, obviously there's a much higher number of people who purchase vinyls than actually have access to a vinyl player. So a lot of this purchasing, especially when we look at music, you can kind of tell it's happening. It's an identity thing rather than it is actually like a consumption format thing. So really, really big aspect of fan behavior there. When we look at the other side of it, sort of a digital fatigue or like a digital detox kind of thing, we do see a bit of a trend there as well that's sort of a little bit more broad. So like anecdotally this year in January, sort of digital detox felt like the new dry January. And then when we asked consumers, have you actually tried to reduce your screen time? 2/3 of consumers had tried to do that in the last month. And a big part of this was turning to physical formats and doing like in-person activities.
Great. And so we know that the analog revival or the physical revival is real. We know why is it happening. Is there something specific that companies should really pay attention to in terms of the sort of social and entertainment industries? Like, are there any threats or opportunities for companies to action in this space regarding this whole rise of physical and analog?
Mm-hmm. For sure. So in broader entertainment, this is actually a really great opportunity. There's a lot of discussion in the last couple of years about the pitfalls of streaming, namely that the money that it pays out is not really adequate to keep up with the content creation costs, right? We've seen this in music where artists really struggle to have adequate remuneration. And we've seen it in video now as well, where you have a lot of streaming services and a lot of TV shows, and they're struggling to get the pricing right and incentivize consumers to pay enough to really, really make it make sense. And when you look at physical, the cost on a one-off purchase basis is much, much higher. So you can actually, the margins are a lot higher. You can bring in more revenue. You can give more to fans by doing that as well. So it's kind of a two-way exchange. Things like selling vinyl is now a huge part of a lot of artists' businesses because it is something that they can, interact with their fans. They can sell it, the fan has it, and it's a lot more money than just having 1,000 streams on Spotify. We spoke with Fan Marketplace even, and they say that, physical merchandise like records can go for almost $70 on their website. And that can be exchanged with other offerings. So this is actually a really great opportunity if you work in a form of entertainment that has physical manifestations. On the other hand, if you're a digital first proposition like social platforms, it's a little bit more challenging because if consumers are moving away from the digital world, they will be moving away from your proposition, and you don't have any sort of like hooks in that real world to still engage with them. So for social media, this is going to be a really big test sort of to see if they can not be something that distracts just from the real world, but something that can add to it and allow audiences to engage with both without feeling like they're overly demanded of.
Yeah, I guess there we might well see in the future some sort of touch points of social platforms, etc., that are creating actual physical touch points in the IRL environment, right? Whether it be, I don't know, festivals or whatever it may be. What comes to mind is an analogy with what Apple used to do with its iTunes festival kind of thing. Is that the kind of thing we might see in the future?
Yeah, for sure. I mean, the YouTube streamies are a good example of using sort of a real world touch point to kind of create more of a culture around YouTube and YouTube creators. TikTok also actually does this a lot with festivals and events where they'll have like a sponsored by TikTok and like uses QR code and like add to the stream, whatever. So stuff like that, not necessarily saying like, oh, go on TikTok right now, but like maybe you can take your video and like go home and edit it and post it up later. And it sort of gives people this tie-in where it's not just something that's happening in isolation on their phone, but something that's happening in real life that they can then use social to share with. This is something that as social platforms have become more entertainment focused and less social focused, there's a lot more like presentation aspect to it and a lot less of this direct, I'm just going to share this with my friends. Which actually can disincentivize people from just casually posting and sharing on it. So sort of using these real world touch points is actually sort of an opportunity to bring back this like meaningful, valuable exchange between audience members on these platforms.
Great stuff. Well, thank you so much for being here with us today, Hannah. Thank you, everybody, for listening. And please feel free to download the free summary of this report below. Thanks, everyone, and have a great day.